Hi, everyone. My name's Roger. I work for the Boston Debate League, and I will be judging and facilitating our sample round on the Justice in Policing case.
Hi, I'm Kayla Ray, and I go to the O'Brien, and I'm 1AC.
Hi, my name is Perpetua, and I also go to the O'Brien. I am second speaker from Affirmative.
Hi, I'm Emily. I go to Brooke Charter High School, and I am going to be the 1NC.
Hi, I'm Manuel. I go to Brooke Charter High School, and I'm going to be the 2NC.
And I'm Alexandra. I'm the volunteer manager with the Boston Debate League, and I will also be judging and facilitating this round.
So now we're going to kick off the debate with the first affirmative constructive.
Okay, so I'd like to begin giving a roadmap. I'm going to introduce the problem that exists in the world today and explain my plan to solve it. Inherency. Existing police training reinforces us versus them mentality that encourages police misconduct. Brooks, 2020. Harm. Police violence is an epidemic and Black people are disproportionately impacted. Black Lives Matter, 19. Plan. The United States federal government should reinforce policing by enacting sections 361 and 364 of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act of 2020. This will require all police officers to receive racial profiling and implicit bias training and restrict police use of deadly force. Solvency. Police reform through implicit bias training works to reduce bias, leading to reduced racial profiling and deadly use of force. Spencer, 2016.
Okay, so Kayla has introduced the affirmative argument. She's given us an explanation of what's going on in the world right now and why that's harmful, and proposed a plan and explained why her plan is going to solve that problem. So now we move on to the first cross-examination, in which the negative team will ask questions to Kayla about the speech that she just read. For the purpose of this training video, we're just going to have one question during cross-examination.
How will your plan reduce police violence?
My plan will reduce police violence by helping police understand the biases and training them on when and how to use force will make them more prepared for different situations, and then this will reduce violence.
So now we're going to move on to the first negative constructive. As a judge, you would always ask before each speech if debaters want to take prep time before their speech. For this debate, we're not going to have any prep time because the debaters have already prepared in advance and know what each other's arguments are. But make sure during the debate rounds that you ask about prep time before each speech. So now we're going to turn it over to Emily for the first negative constructive.
In the roadmap and intro, I'm going to be explaining why the affirmative plan won't work and introduce a counterplan to better solve the affirmative's problems.
You just heard Emily share that she's going to give a roadmap. A roadmap is just a brief overview of the arguments that a debater is going to give during their speech. So listen for those at the beginning of each speech to help guide you as you listen.
Solvency. White police officers are more likely to use force and guns in minority neighborhoods. The affirmative does not increase the police diversity. Sloan, 2020. The police unions and contracts prevent meaningful policing reforms and they are too strong. Check the police, 2020. Now here is the counterplan, defund the police. The CP's counterplan, the United States federal government should reinvest the police budget increase into our communities instead related to services such as healthcare, education, and affordable housing. Our counterplan will solve the affirmative's harms better than the affirmative's plan. Defunding the police means allocating funds from the police to community services like the education and affordable housing from the McNair Daily News 2020.
Okay, so now the 1NC is complete, and Kayla, who just gave the 1AC, is going to ask a question in cross-examination to the negative team.
How would your counterplan reduce police violence?
Our counterplan would take police out of a lot of situations where there isn't a high risk to the public. If someone is having a mental health crisis, for example, the police might not get to call it at all.
All right, great. And now we're going to move on to the second affirmative constructive. Both teams have introduced their arguments at this point. So teams are now going to keep reading evidence, but they're going to be doing that to respond to arguments that have been brought up already in this debate. Take it away, Perpetua.
I am going to respond to the negative attacks and respond to their counterplan. Although the affirmative plan doesn't call for more racial diversity, we agree that diversity is important and believe that it helps enhance training. Police unions have a lot to empower, but there are ways to make effective changes. We should do a permutation. We must do the plan and the counterplan. Changing the entire system is the best way to improve policing and solve for the harms.
All right, great. Thank you, Perpetua. So now we're gonna have the negative team ask a cross-examination question again of the affirmative team. So Emily, please take it away.
How would the perm work?
We think we could invest more in police training, but also defund the police overall by spending less money on other parts in the police budget.
All right, great, thank you. So now we're gonna move on to the final constructive speech. This is given by the negative team, and that is gonna be Manuel. Go ahead, Manuel.
The negative now has 2 speeches in a row. I will focus on explaining why the affirmative plan will fail. Diversity of solvency. Diversity is an important issue that the affirmative can't solve. You can't choose to simply add it to your plan now. Police unions oppose holding police officers accountable for misconduct. This is Fisk and Richardson, 2017.
Thank you, Manuel. So now we're gonna move on to the final cross-examination, and Perpetua is gonna ask a question for Manuel.
How would unions react to defunding the police?
Maybe not well, but defunding the police is a better solution to police violence.
Okay, great. So now we are done with both the constructive speeches and the cross-examinations for the entire debate. Each debater has given one speech already and been asked questions about the speech that they gave. In the second half of the debate, each debater will give one final speech known as a rebuttal. In the rebuttals, the debaters are going to focus on arguments that have already been introduced and explaining why their team's arguments are stronger than the other team's arguments. As you heard Manuel mention, his 2NC focused just on attacking the affirmative team's plan. This is because the negative has 2 speeches in a row. Now we're going to turn it over to Emily, who will give the second negative speech in what we call the negative block, and she will focus on the counterplan. Go ahead, Emily.
Since my partner focused on why the affirmative plan would fail, I'm going to be focusing on my team's counterplan. The counterplan reduces the needs for retraining by taking police out of the low-risk situations and reducing the potential for police violence. The counterplan also takes power from the police unions and reduces the impact of low police diversity. Permit fails, calls for reform, training, and procedural justice gets in the way of defunding the police. Vertil 2020. We need to do just the counterplan itself.
Thank you, Emily. So now we've heard an explanation about why the plan and the counterplan may not work well together from the negative team. You can see here the negative is starting to set up an argument that will ultimately explain why their counterplan is the best solution and why it must be done alone without the affirmative plan. Now we're going to move on to the first affirmative rebuttal, where the affirmative will try and respond to both speeches given in the negative block. For this, we're going to turn it over to Kayla.
I will respond to both negative speeches, extending my team's argument from earlier in the debate. We believe diversity is important but we don't believe either team substantially changes diversity, so you cannot vote on this issue. If unions are faced with the choice of supporting retraining police officers or defunding the police, they will definitely favor in retraining police. So the union's argument is a stronger point for the affirmative. The counterplan may provide other ways that police violence can be reduced, but there is no reason why we can't retrain police and defund the police if we need to.
All right, thank you, Kayla. So Kayla did a great job of responding both to the attacks on the affirmative plan and to the negative argument about the counterplan. So now we're getting into our final two speeches of the debate. In these final two speeches, both teams will try and convince the judge one last time why their argument is the strongest. We're going to start with the negative. Go ahead, Manuel.
I'm going to explain why my team's arguments are stronger and why you should vote for the negative. We believe that the best way to reduce police violence is to take police out of low-risk situations. The affirmative changes very little about interactions between public and the police. Our counterplan reduces risk of police violence and reinvests in communities to help reduce crime. Any attempt to retrain police will get in the way of attempts to defund the police. So you must vote for the counterplan alone. Vote for the negative team.
All right. And so as you can see, the negative presented one clear thing for the judge to vote on. They wanted to focus on the counterplan and why that solved the best and why it alone solved the problem. And that was a great example of that in your speech, Manuel. Now we're going to go on to Perpetua to close us out in the final affirmative rebuttal.
I'm going to explain why my team's arguments are stronger and why you should vote for the affirmative. While the counterplan will help reduce violence, it would be much more successful if combined with effective training on bias and restrictions on the use of force. Although the counterplan is helpful, the negative has not proven why it is a reason that the affirmative plan would not work. They have only offered additional support, not shown why our plan would fail. So if you must vote, vote for the affirmative team.
All right, thank you. At this point, I like to give a round of applause to both teams and congratulate both teams. Nice job. All right, and the next thing I need to do as the judge, before anything else, is determine a winner. So I would read through my notes on arguments from both teams, and I would pick which team I believe has won. After I do that, I would give oral feedback to both teams, to each debater, explaining what I think they did well and what I think they could work on. And once I complete that oral feedback, I would dismiss the debaters to let them rejoin their other teams in the auditorium. At this point, I would then finish completing the rest of my ballot, writing my full reason for decision and all of my written comments, and then submit that to the tab room. Thanks again for joining us for this judge training video, and good luck with your rounds.